At my 63rd birthday party, my son Ethan stood up, raised his glass, and said, "My dad's a loser, but at least Mom married a real man." The laughter died instantly. Forks froze midair. Conversations halted like a record scratched in front of a full house. We were in my backyard in Asheville, North Carolina. String lights hung between the trees, casting a warm glow over folding tables and paper plates. Friends, relatives, and a few neighbors had come to celebrate. Burgers sizzled on the grill. Country music played low in the background. It was supposed to be a simple, joyful evening, but now complete silence. I sat at the head of the table, the candle on my birthday cake still flickering. I didn't speak. I didn't flinch. Just lifted my glass, eyes hardening ever so slightly as they locked onto the man my son had just praised. Richard, my ex, wife's second husband, seated across the lawn in his designer loafers and smug grin. That was the moment something shifted inside me. And that shift would change everything. Stay with me. What happened after that toast might surprise you. The clinking of cutlery resumed slowly, awkwardly, but I barely noticed. My mind had already left the party, left the lawn, the candles, and the stairs. It drifted back, past the last few painful years, into a quieter time when I still believed being a good father would be enough. After Lillian and I divorced nearly a decade ago, I kept the house in Asheville, not out of spite, but because it was the only thing left that felt stable. She left with Richard, a man with ambition, she'd said. He ran a real estate firm and drove a different luxury car each week. Sleek, polished, always talking like life was a business plan. And yet, I was the one who picked up the slack. I remembered the day Ethan, my son, dropped out of college. 21, no job, no plan. He called, sounding embarrassed. "Dad, I just need a little time to figure things out." I didn't scold him. I bought him a used Honda instead. Paid the insurance. Paid the rent. Paid the phone bill. Every just until turned into months. Then years. Ethan wasn't cruel. Not at first. Just entitled. Like life owed him comfort, and I was the designated provider. What stung was how naturally he started comparing me to Richard. "He's sharp," Ethan once said, tossing Richard's business card on my kitchen counter. "He sees potential in people. He gets me." That card stayed on my fridge for a year, a reminder that I was slowly losing my son, one unpaid bill at a time. Then there was Sophie, my daughter, the quiet one, the kind one. She was 28 now, working as a social worker, the kind of person who texts her dad just to ask if he's eaten. She didn't make speeches or toss blame, but I saw it in her eyes. She knew who built this family and who just bought their way in. She had been standing just a few feet away tonight when Ethan made his toast. Her eyes had gone wide. Her fingers gripped her wine glass like it might shatter. But she didn't stay silent. "Ethan," she said sharply, stepping forward. "That's enough." He laughed bitterly, still holding his glass. "Come on, Soph. It's just the truth." Her voice didn't rise, but her words cut deeper than any shout could. "You have no idea what it's taken for Dad to give us everything. You never even cared to ask." The silence returned thicker this time, heavier. Sophie sat back down, her jaw tight, tears threatening. She glanced at me, a silent apology for not stopping him sooner. But she had done what no one else at that table dared to do. Speak the truth. As the last of the awkward cake was served, and a few chairs scraped back an escape, I stayed behind. I began clearing the plates, stacking cups, scooping up half-eaten food. The candle on the cake had long since gone out, the frosting starting to melt into the paper plate. I scraped the words, "To the man who builds everything," into the trash bin, biting the inside of my cheek to keep from breaking. Richard was already gone and vanished like a passing storm. Lillian, too. Ethan didn't even say goodnight. The yard, once full of chatter and music, now held only the hum of the porch light and the distant chirp of crickets. I took out the trash, the bag heavier than it should have been. I stood by the bins, staring down the street, watching porch lights blink on one by one in other homes' families still intact, still whole. Maybe I hadn't failed by not giving enough. Maybe I failed by never letting him see what happened when I stopped. And this time, I would. The morning after my birthday, I woke up before sunrise. I hadn't slept much, just stared at the ceiling, listening to the wind tapping the screen door, replaying Ethan's words in my head. That voice, soaked in entitlement, echoing off the walls of my memory. I got dressed slowly. No breakfast, just coffee, black and bitter, same as every morning since Lillian left. The sun hadn't yet crested over the Blue Ridge Mountains, but I knew exactly what I had to do. It was time. For the first time in years, I didn't wonder if Ethan had eaten. I didn't check the app to see if his car insurance was overdue. I didn't worry whether the house I paid for had heat or groceries or Wi-Fi. I grabbed the registration papers from my filing cabinet pristine, untouched, and still very much in my name. Then I took a slow drive across Asheville, past dew-covered lawns and quiet sidewalks, until I pulled up in front of Ethan's townhouse. I'd picked this neighborhood for him 5 years ago safe, central, clean, paid the down payment, made every mortgage payment since. The plan was simple: give him a start, a real shot. But it had become a crutch. His Cara silver Honda I bought when he was 22 sat, gleaming in the driveway like a monument to my quiet funding. I parked behind it, blocking him in, then walked up to the door and knocked firmly. After a minute, the door cracked open. Ethan stood there, hair messy, shirt wrinkled, the smell of last night's beer still lingering in the air. "Dad?" he muttered, rubbing his eyes. "What are you doing here?" "I'm here for the keys," I said. He blinked. "What?" "The car," I clarified, holding up the registration. "It's mine. Always has been." He stared at the paper, then back at me, the reality settling on his face like fog. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." "This is insane," he scoffed, stepping back. "You can't just take it. You gave it to me." "No," I said. "I lent it to you, like I lent you everything else. This is me taking it back." We stood there, silence brimming with heat. Finally, he shoved past the door and tossed the keys into my chest. "Fine, take it. Be petty." I caught them, calm as ever. Being petty would have been leaving years ago. This is me finally drawing a line. He didn't say another word, just slammed the door. I turned and walked to the car, feeling the gravel crunch beneath my boots. As I slid into the driver's seat, I exhaled a long, quiet breath. For once, I wasn't just reacting. I was reclaiming. Before heading home, I drove straight to the bank. The teller smiled politely, but I didn't return it. I handed over the mortgage documents, circled my name, and said, "I want to stop all automatic payments effective immediately. Let Ethan learn what overdue feels like. No more quiet support. No more quiet anything." It didn't take long for Ethan to show up. Less than 24 hours after I pulled the plug on the house payments, there was a pounding on my front door loud, rapid, angry. I opened it to find him standing there, fists clenched, chest heaving. His eyes were bloodshot, whether from rage or a hangover, I couldn't tell. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he shouted before I could speak. "Good morning to you too," I said, calm as stone. "You took the car, and now the bank says the mortgage payments are frozen? Are you trying to ruin me?" "I'm just done funding someone who thinks I'm a loser," I replied, stepping aside. "If you're here to yell, keep it short." He stormed into the living room like it still belonged to him, pacing in tight, erratic circles. "You're unbelievable," he spat. "All because I said one thing at a party?" "One thing that confirmed what you've believed for years," I said flatly. "Words reveal truths, Ethan. You meant every bit of it." Before he could answer, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I picked it up and saw the name Richard Grant. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened the email that had come with the call. Subject line, "Legal action pending." I scanned the message quickly. Legalese dressed up as righteousness. Richard accused me of emotional abuse, of manipulating Ethan, of creating unnecessary financial hardship for the sake of ego. He ended with a smug little note. "We have lawyers, Martin. This won't end well for you." I let out a breath and looked at Ethan. "Your new father's already drafting lawsuits?" Ethan shifted, suddenly less sure. "He just wants to help." "No," I said. "He wants to own you. And right now, you're letting him." That night, after Ethan left doors slamming hard enough to rattle the frames, I made a call of my own, to someone who once knew Ethan better than anyone. Caleb Shaw picked up after 2 rings. His voice was calm, measured. "Martin," he said, "didn't expect to hear from you. I need legal advice," I said, "and I think you're the only one I trust with this." Caleb had grown up just a few houses down. He and Ethan had been inseparable until their 20s. Where Ethan stalled out, Caleb had pressed on scholarship to UNC, law school, and now running his own firm right in downtown Asheville. He agreed to meet the next morning. When we sat down in his office, modest but clean, I laid it all out: the car, the house, the threats. Caleb nodded slowly, taking notes, occasionally glancing up with that same quiet focus I remembered from years ago. Then he leaned back and said, "Martin, there's something you should know. A few months ago, Ethan asked me for a loan. Secretly, said not to tell Richard." My stomach turned. "Why?" He said Richard doesn't really believe in him, that he just smiles, says the right things, but never helps when it counts. I sat back in my chair, the irony burning. "He used to say that about me," I murmured. Caleb met my eyes. "I think your son's in deeper than you realize." The next morning I drove to the corner office above Main Street where Ellen Green worked. She'd been my accountant for almost 15 years, sharp, discreet, no nonsense. The kind of woman who could spot a red flag buried inside a spreadsheet from a mile away. She raised an eyebrow when I walked in, holding a folder thick with years' worth of statements. "This isn't tax season," she said dryly. "It's personal," I replied, "and overdue." We sat across from each other in her paper-stacked office. As I opened the folder and spread out documents, mortgage payments, wire transfers, old check stubs, every last dollar I'd funneled into Ethan's life without question. "I need to know exactly what I've paid," I said, voice steady. "And more importantly, if there's any way this man," I tapped Richard's name on an email printout, "has been abusing the system." Ellen adjusted her glasses and leaned in. For the next hour, we combed through records. She clicked through tax databases, scanned filings linked to Richard's companies. I sat in silence, fingers folded, trying not to let the weight in my chest settle too deep. Then she frowned. "Here," she said, turning the screen toward me. "See this? He's reporting charitable donations through one firm, but claiming deductions through another. Same money. Double dipped." She kept going. "Undisclosed assets. Inflated write-offs. A history of conveniently timed financial losses in paper, at least." My blood simmered. Not with surprise, but with confirmation. "He's not just a fraud as a father," I said quietly. "He's a fraud. Period." Ellen nodded. "I'd say it's audit-worthy, maybe even criminal if the right person looks into it." I looked out the window for a long moment, watching traffic roll past the quiet morning sidewalks. Then I turned back to her. "How do I report it anonymously?" She handed me a printed form. "The IRS has a whistleblower submission channel. You don't have to sign anything. But if you want them to take it seriously, attach the documents, all of them." I took the form in hand, the weight of it strange and cold. Not vengeance strategy. I didn't care about Richard's money. I cared about Ethan seeing him for who he really was. "He's stolen my place in Ethan's life," I murmured. "But not with truth, with polish, with noise." Ellen didn't say anything, just handed me a pen. I filled out the form right there at her desk. Every box, every attachment, every detail that might crack Richard's foundation. When I was done, I sealed the envelope, pressed it closed, and sat back. For the first time in weeks, my anger wasn't a fire-it, was a tool, a sharp one. I wasn't doing this to win. I was doing this so my son would finally stop mistaking glitter for gold. It was barely noon when the phone rang. I was sitting on the porch, sipping lukewarm coffee, watching a squirrel scramble along the fence line when the screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen in a long time. Lillian. I stared at it for a beat, then answered. "Martin," she snapped, skipping any greeting. "What the hell are you doing?" "Good afternoon to you too," I replied calmly. "Don't play that tone with me," she continued. "Ethan just called. He's beside himself. You took his car, cut the mortgage, and now Richard says someone's reporting him to the IRS. Are you trying to blow up the family?" I let the silence sit for a moment before I said, "Funny. I thought the family blew up the night you walked out." She sighed, frustrated, but not defensive. "I'm serious. This is going too far." "Far?" I said. "After being called a loser in front of 30 people at my own birthday? After funding Ethan's life for a decade while Richard smiled in tailored suits and let me pay the bills?" There was a pause. Then her voice softened, almost imperceptibly. "I didn't know you were still paying for the house," she said quietly. "Of course you didn't," I said, "because Richard made sure nobody did." Another pause. "Martin," her voice now lower, conflicted, "you need to know something. Richard hasn't been honest with me either." I leaned forward. "How do you mean?" "He's got accounts I didn't know about, properties in other states. Investments in names that aren't mine or his. I only found out because one of his assistants slipped and emailed me the wrong spreadsheet last month. He didn't speak. He let her keep going. I've been trying to piece it together, and yes, I sent some of that paperwork to a tax attorney I know. Confidentially. I raised an eyebrow. You're saying you're the one who tipped off the investigation? I didn't file it officially, she said quickly, but I sent the trail, hoping someone else would. And you did that. Why? For Ethan, she said. He's too blinded by Richard's image. But I've been watching Richard turn colder with him, less generous, less tolerant. I thought maybe, if Richard's shine wore off, Ethan might finally see. The irony struck hard. The woman who left me for Richard was now unraveling him from the inside. I didn't think it would come to this, she added, but I couldn't just watch anymore. I took a long breath. I've protected Ethan all these years, I said. Paid his way, took his blame, held my tongue, and now I'm done holding back. Lillian was quiet on the other end. I just want him to see the truth, she said. So do I replied. Another pause. Then she spoke gently. I never meant to make you the enemy. I looked out toward the distant ridgeline, voice calm. I'm not the enemy, Lillian. I'm just the only one who remembers what it cost to raise him. Then I ended the call. The fallout came fast. By the end of the week, word had spread through the real estate circles. Richard Grant was under federal investigation for tax irregularities. His name, once synonymous with luxury listings and slick marketing, was now followed by whispers and sidelong glances. 2 of his key investors pulled out. A third froze all future funding. And when the cameras showed up outside his downtown office, he did what all men like him eventually do. He looked for someone to blame. That someone was Ethan. You're a liability now, Richard said flatly, standing in the foyer of his gated estate. You need to go. Ethan stood frozen, suitcase by his feet, disbelief draining the color from his face. Wait, are you serious? Richard didn't answer, just nodded toward the door. 30 minutes later, Ethan was on the curb with nothing but a duffel bag and the Honda key fob that no longer unlocked anything. He called me first. Straight to voicemail. Then Sophie, she answered. What do you want, Ethan? She asked, not cold, but firm. I have nowhere to go, he said. Richard kicked me out. And now you need Dad? She asked. A pause. Yes. Another pause. Longer. I love you, Ethan, Sophie said quietly. But maybe this is what you needed. Click. He called a few other friends, the ones who used to circle around when Richard was offering wine tastings in vacation homes. No one answered. He wandered the streets of Asheville as the sun sank behind the mountains. His rolling suitcase thumped behind him over cracks in the sidewalk. His shirt clung to his back, soaked with sweat. His once white sneakers were now streaked with dirt and city grime. The city was alive around him, families in restaurants, couples on benches, music from open patios, but he felt utterly invisible. He ended up near the riverfront park, where the French Broad shimmered under the lamplight. He sat on a bench and buried his face in his hands. And then the memories came. The day Dad taught him how to patch drywall. The way Dad always waited in the driveway, even when Ethan stumbled home late. The text every month. Your insurance is paid. Be safe. The Christmas Martin gave him a coat instead of money, because he knew Ethan would waste it, and how Ethan had thrown it aside without a thank you. The time Martin showed up to his college apartment with a trunk full of groceries, no lecture, just food. He hadn't said thank you then either. Now, those memories felt like bricks on his chest, heavy, unavoidable. For so long, he'd wanted the approval of Richard the Flash, the charm, the promises. But when things fell apart, Richard hadn't offered a second glance. Dad had offered his life. Ethan looked up at the night sky. It was quiet, stars dim behind light pollution, but still present. Like Martin, silent, steady, always there, even when Ethan hadn't looked. He pulled out his phone. No more calls, no more texts. He'd walk, one step at a time. It was nearly midnight when the knock came. Soft, almost hesitant 3 quick taps, then silence. I had just turned off the porch light, about to head upstairs, when I heard it again. Not urgent, not demanding, just there. I opened the door. Ethan stood on the other side, shoulders slumped, eyes swollen from either tears or exhaustion, probably both. His duffel bag was gone, replaced by nothing but the clothes on his back and a folded piece of paper clutched in one trembling hand. I was wrong, he said, voice barely above a whisper. I see it now. I didn't move. I didn't speak. He took a shaky breath, then extended the paper toward me. It's not much, just what I wanted to say, properly. I took the letter but didn't unfold it. Not yet. I'm not here to ask for money, he continued, or a place to stay. I know I lost that right. I finally stepped aside. Come in. He entered like a stranger slowly, carefully, taking in the living room as though seeing it for the first time. The worn-out recliner, the photos on the wall, the faint smell of old wood and coffee grounds. He sat on the edge of the couch, hands clasped tightly. I thought Richard was strength, he said. I thought Flash meant success, but he dropped me the second things got hard. I said nothing, just listened. All those years, he went on, voice cracking, I acted like you were holding me back, but the truth is, you were the only one holding me up. The silence between us wasn't uncomfortable, it was necessary. Like air filling the space where falsehoods had finally been cleared away. He looked up at me. I want to start over. I don't expect it to be easy, and I know I need to earn everything from here on out. I sat down across from him, hands resting on my knees. You don't have a car, I said plainly. I'll walk. You don't have money. I'll work. I nodded slowly, weighing the words not just by what was said, but how it was said. There was no arrogance in his voice now, no entitlement, just quiet resolve. I can help you, I said. Not with cash, but I can help you find work. His eyes widened, then softened. Thank you. You'll start at the bottom, I added. Same place I did. I should have started there a long time ago, he said, more to himself than to me. We sat in silence a little longer before I finally unfolded the letter. His handwriting was messy, rushed but honest. An apology, a promise, and maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something real. I looked up, met his eyes. You've got a lot to fix. I know. Then let's start tomorrow. The downfall came like a summer storm over Asheville, sudden, violent, and impossible to ignore. The first wave was a whisper, an article from a local financial blog. Real estate tycoon under IRS scrutiny. It named Richard Grant directly. Within days, whispers became headlines. Then investigations. Then panic. Federal agents froze Richard's accounts, seized property deeds, subpoenaed transaction records. Investors, once charmed by his charisma and champagne promises, vanished overnight. Offices closed. Lawsuits piled up. And Richard, always impeccably dressed, always 2 steps ahead, was left cornered. His empire didn't crumble. It imploded. From my living room window, I watched the echoes of his collapse ripple across the town. A for sale sign outside one of his luxury properties. A news van parked near his gated community. My inbox pinged with updates from Ellen, my accountant, who reported every asset freeze like a victory. And Ethan? He said nothing, just sat beside me, hands clasped, the glow of the television painting shadows under his eyes. When a headline flashed, tax fraud allegations confirmed, he blinked, as if waking from a long dream. Then came the letter. Delivered by courier. No legal letterhead, no bravado. Just a single-page shaky font, the kind you type when your hands don't stop trembling. Richard Grant had officially withdrawn all claims, complaints, and legal threats. The language was polite, formal, almost apologetic. But beneath it was defeat, thinly veiled and bitter. No signature flourish. Just, Richard. I handed it to Caleb, without a word. He read it once, then again slowly. He's finished, Caleb said, tapping the letter thoughtfully. Legally, he can't touch Ethan. Financially, he's underwater. And with Lillian filing for separation, he's got no shield left. Ethan, standing across the room, exhaled so deeply, it sounded like a sob. He used to call me his investment, Ethan said quietly. Said I'd make the family proud, but I was just leverage. No one responded. What could you say to a boy no? A man who finally saw the truth of the person he'd spent his life admiring. Later that night, we stood outside under the stars. A rare silence between us. The soft rustle of leaves, the distant hum of Asheville traffic, the weight of everything unsaid. Do you think he ever loved us? Ethan asked, voice low. I thought of the way Richard posed for photos, but never listened. The way he gifted watches, but never remembered birthdays. The way he praised Ethan in public, but scolded him in private. No, I said finally. He loved control, and we were just part of the show. Ethan nodded, but his shoulders didn't fall. Instead, he looked toward the horizon, where dawn had just begun to tint the sky. I don't want to be anyone's investment anymore, he said. I want to be someone I can respect. And in that moment, I didn't see the boy who once blamed me at a birthday party. I saw a man who had been broken open and rebuilt from the inside. The sun dipped low behind the Blue Ridge Mountains as I pulled into Sophie's driveway. A quiet hush wrapped the house in gold. She'd sent the invite 2 days ago. Dinner, just us, you, me, Ethan. I hadn't asked questions, just said yes. Inside, the aroma of toasted bread and roasted peppers greeted me. The table was set for 3. Simple, warm, candles flickered. No centerpiece, just intention. Ethan was already there. He stood as I walked in clean shirt, neat hair, the faintest stubble on his jaw. He looked taller than I remembered, or maybe straighter. Hey, Dad. Right on time. Sophie smiled as she handed out plates. No speeches tonight, she said. Just sandwiches and whatever we remember. We ate. Slowly. Conversation stumbled at first, then steadied. A memory surfaced, something about the backyard swing, set, collapsing in 2001. Sophie reenacted the fall. Ethan added his version with full sound effects. You cried for an hour, Sophie teased him. I thought it was a rocket, Ethan laughed. Dad built it, so I figured it had to fly. He looked at me and smiled. You built everything. I nodded, throat tight. I didn't need to say anything. But then another voice joined in from the hallway. Except the curtains, Lillian said softly. She stepped in quietly, unsure if she was welcome. I glanced at Sophie, who nodded slightly. It had been Sophie's idea to invite her too. One dinner. One chance. Lillian looked older than I remembered. Her sharpness had softened. The way she carried herself now, careful, quiet, spoke volumes. I didn't come for a seat, she said. Just wanted to say thank you. Ethan blinked. Mom? She looked at him with something raw. For seeing what I missed. For giving me the truth. Richard was never who I thought. Her eyes met mine. You protected them in ways I didn't even notice. And I'm sorry for calling it bitterness. We stood there, 4 people in one room, stitched back together by time and truth. I didn't invite her to sit, but Sophie did. And we finished dinner together. Later, Ethan and I stood by the porch as stars blinked awake above Asheville. The wind was gentle. No more tension in his shoulders. No more excuses. You gave us everything, he said. And I almost gave it all to someone who gave nothing. I didn't respond. Just watched the sky. The house behind us was quiet. Inside, Sophie and Lillian washed dishes side by side. Outside, father and son simply stood. Not to talk, but to start again. Final scene. The fence, the frame, and the foundation. Late summer in Asheville had a certain stillness to it, the kind that only comes after a storm. Martin sat quietly on the wooden bench by the porch, the old house finally at peace. The sky above was soft and pale, brushed with the last golden light of evening. From his seat, he watched Ethan kneeling by the fence, paintbrush in hand, carefully recoating the slats one stroke at a time. The same fence Martin had once built with his own father. Every tap of the brush sounded like healing. Inside, the living room had been tidied. The framed photo of the family picnic, the one that had once hung crooked and forgotten, was now centered above the mantel. Sophie had wiped off the dust herself, humming an old gospel tune. It was the same one Lillian used to sing when the kids were small. Sunday's coming, Sophie said as she stepped onto the porch, wrapping her arms around her father from behind. You coming to church this time? Martin chuckled softly, resting a weathered hand on hers. I might. She smiled and whispered near his ear. You've always been our foundation. He looked down at Ethan, who had paused his work and glanced back with a quiet nod. No words needed. It had taken time, faith, and a whole lot of letting go. But now, under this quiet sky, it was clear. Forgiveness isn't weakness, it's how you build what's broken. Life is full of betrayal stories. Stories where people walk out, let you down, trade love for flash. But the ones worth telling? The ones that stay with you? They're about those who quietly stayed, worked, prayed. Martin looked to the heavens, remembering his darkest nights. Lord, he murmured, thank you for what I couldn't see before. Thank you for what you let me lose, and thank you for what you helped me rebuild. If you're in the middle of your own betrayal story, maybe this is the part where everything changes. Maybe grace doesn't look like a miracle. Maybe it looks like a painted fence, a shared sandwich, or a phone that finally stops ringing with blame. There's power in silence, in holding the line, in trusting that truth always rises. And if you're listening now, if this story echoed something in you, remember, you're not alone, and you're not done. This is just one of many betrayal stories that turned into redemption. May yours be next. If this story moved you, consider subscribing, leaving a comment, or sharing it with someone who needs it. Sometimes, the right story finds you at just the right time.